therapist, we have Eden. Therapist has taken the position that the invention of the atomic bomb was good for humanity because it's keeping the world powers in balance. Eden's taken the opposition. We're going to be based upon who concedes. We don't get a concession. We'll put it to a voting poll in which you, the audience, are going to decide on who you think performed better overall in the debate. No time limit, no moderation. You can get started.
Okay, so my position is that since the invention of the atomic bomb, we have seen no big war, as example the Napoleon Wars, the First World War, or the Second World War. We have only had puppet wars or small wars, which have been bloody, but didn't have the such an impact as the other ones. So when the atomic bomb was invented by the USA, they had at the beginning a monopoly which they could use freely and say, "You're misbehaving, behave now. If you don't, we can drop a A-bomb on you like we did on Japan." The Japan incident was pretty much showing what the USA had acquired in their arsenal and showing that they were a world leader. And so the world powers I'd like to clarify are, in my eyes, powers that have that are able to use uh, A-bombs, such as America, Russia, China, France, and England. I don't see any other country as a world power. And I think I'm done with my opening statement there.
Okay. I am going to be refuting pretty much all of that. First of all, we'll start from the back end. That those are the only world powers. Evidently, if we contribute or equate world powership to the possession or the willingness to use nuclear bombs, then they are certainly not the only world powers, and they're not the only world powers at B. Then I will refute nuclear deterrent effectiveness in the world and point out a few examples of ways that the nuclear arms race has created more wars than it has stopped. That's my opening statement.
Okay, so I understand that you see other countries like I just remembered, like North Korea also has A-bombs, but they're not using them, and the nuclear deterrent is what's keeping them in balance. Now, to validate that statement of mine, does the MAD doctrine tell you something?
Does the what tell me something, sorry?
In the Cold War times, there was a doctrine made which states that if a nuclear war would break out, and in the likelihood that the USA and Russia would both launch their nuclear missiles against each other, there would be a there would be a mutual destruction, a completely mutual destruction. Both would be completely wiped out. Now that is the deterrent which is keeping them in balance. Since the Cold War, since the Soviet Union, we haven't seen this really, but it is the best example of we have an A-bomb, but we shouldn't use it, and it's keeping the balance because the Soviet Union knew if we launch our nuclear missiles at any allies of the United States, they will shoot theirs. And it was the same thing from the US's side.
Are you talking specifically about the Cuban Missile Crisis?
No. Just in general,
Just the Cold War in general.
Yeah.
The Cold War was an actual war, and people did lose their lives. The thing is,
I don't deny
I
that.
I will admit that a nuclear deterrent is somewhat effective against another nuclear threat. However, it doesn't deter regular wars. Now, what is to say that um, the US launches a land-based assault on Russia, fights them all the way back to within an inch of their lives, and then Russia fires the nukes as a last-ditch attempt? Is that a deterrent? No, the deterrent is gone at that point. There's no deterrent because they don't care. It's the same with terrorists. If terrorists got hold of the bombs, terrorists nowadays, you see, don't care about their own lives. To die a martyr is an honor. So they don't care at all. So that mutually assured destruction goes out the window when one party doesn't care about destruction.
Um, you just made an example if the US would invade Russia on a foot. They wouldn't even consider that just because they have the nuclear power. Sure, but my proposition is it's keeping the world powers in balance. I'm not pointing out to any smaller countries. I'm pointing out the big countries who have a nuclear arsenal and are and that is mostly a reason to keep them away from any direct conflict. And that's how the dummy wars, because they knew we can afford to go to a straight war. And that's how we had Vietnam. We had South Vietnam, North Vietnam. South Vietnam was supported by the Americans. North Vietnam was supported by the Russians.
So where is
Same
the
with Korea.
threshold? Where's the threshold for a nuclear attack? Because we've seen countless, and I've got a few examples, but literally countless wars over the world over that have had nuclear capabilities but have still gone on. It is not a deterrent, provably. You can say that the Cuban Missile Crisis, where in that room there was 9 people that voted yes, 8 people that voted no, and then when it came down to that one person, he finally said no, and it cracked. That was a close call, and yes, that the definition balance, you would say that was balanced, but it's so finely balanced, and it's so like dependent on no malfunctions, no human errors, no pure idiocracy. Like, it's not true balance. What it is an irrelevant system. So you have the nuclear bomb, and the only thing that it protects against is the nuclear bomb. The only logical thing to do would be complete nuclear disarmament for the whole world. That way, every country is equal, not equal by military might, but equal on deterrent. So allies and big powerhouse states like you quoted, and those people are indifferent. So when we talk about um, powerhouses, you have, say, America providing a nuclear umbrella for China and Korea, half of Korea. What happens when North Korea decides to eradicate the rest of Korea? Do America go and nuke them? If North Korea nukes South Korea, do the Americans nuke them back? I highly doubt it. It's not in their plans to do so. It would be completely counterintuitive to do so. What happens, what you're not distinguishing is pure revenge and just spitefulness and nuclear deterrent. When we talk about wars that have happened anyway, regardless of nuclear deterrent, we could talk about the Falklands. We had nuclear capability in the Falklands, and we even positioned submarines at the edge of Argentina, and we were prepared to nuke it to shreds. It didn't stop the president of Argentina. Didn't stop. Didn't sorry. Didn't stop. Didn't stop the president invading Argentina at all. There is no. If someone is determined, that nuclear deterrent means nothing. The only thing it is deterring is more nukes. So the only logical thing to do would be have no nukes. You understand?
I understand, but I disagree. If I'll take Russia as a prime example. First, but you agree that having a nuclear arsenal is a deterrent from any invasion?
No, not at all. Not anywhere has that ever been proved.
So, so let's say you're the leader of a rather
No,
small
no, no. I don't want
country.
hypotheticals. I want proof. I want
No,
it's already happened.
no, you also did hypothetical. So, let me finish talking. If you would be the ruler of a smaller country, would you, and you say, I highly dislike Russia and I like to have that piece of country they're having since they're not using it properly, I'm gonna go invade them. What do you think is the first thing? Oh shit, they have nukes. Second of all, they have a nuclear arsenal, and if someone would invade them, they would nuke them or they would completely demolish them. If the nuclear bomb is a deterrent, first of all, and is a last option to go to,
What
that's what it
constitutes
is.
last? What constitutes a last option? Being invaded isn't a last option. You can't. Being invaded happens all the time.
Um, I think you misheard me or something. Um, I said that it is the last option of anything that you do against your opponent. If that's what Britain did. It was it if it came down to it and you saw that the Argentines didn't listen, would have still kept on going after losing the Falklands, then you would have threatened them with the nuke. The
No,
Americans have in the president, it is declared the last option available in a war to use the nuclear bomb.
it's also highly illegal to use any nuclear bombs. Also, the whole point of it being a deterrent is not to get to that point. If it was a deterrent, then the war wouldn't happen. You can't say that it's
Exactly.
a deterrent when you get to that point where you can say that Margaret Thatcher stood there and said that if the Argentinians don't stop, then we'll nuke them. That point shouldn't have been reached because the Argentinians knew that we had nukes, knew that we had the capability, and knew that we were likely going to use them. That didn't deter them. They lost because of manpower. They lost on the ground. They didn't lose because of a nuke. They didn't lose or forfeit because of a nuclear deterrent. They just lost.
Yeah, but you're proving me right there because I said that it's the last option in any conflict. If you have the power to defeat your enemy without using this highly destructive weapon of war, then you don't use it.
But so
And
there was
I'd
two
like to
examples.
and I'd like to know where is it said that using a nuke is illegal? I'd like to know where you got that source from, that information.
From the 122 nations that made it illegal. I will find the specific.
Thank you. And to the it being the last option, it is always as a world power, you always have to make a lot of plans from the first the first bullet, the first shot fired to the worst conflict being something like World War II, in having such a mass of men shooting at each other with such artillery, tanks, planes, whatever.
There we get to the meat and bones. Before I give you this link, that's the meat and bones of this debate. You think that it's good for humanity. First of all, there's no threshold for what constitutes last resort, right? So at the moment, you said the one bullet, the first bullet. The first bullet that a Russian fires at an American, Donald Trump can go, nuke, wipe out. That's not last resort. It doesn't matter if it's last resort or not. Second of all, this is the quote. The TPNW, the Treaty of Prohibition, Prohibiting, fuck off, man. Prohibition of nuclear weapons, or the Nuclear Weapon Ban Treaty, is the first legally binding international agreement to comprehensively prohibit nuclear weapons with the goal of leading towards their total elimination. It was passed on July 7th, 2017.
Okay.
And
I
that's
just
from
wanted
the
to know
US. That's
where you
from the
got that.
powerhouse that you think is saying that we should do it. Also, every single nation is cutting back on how many nukes they have, especially the powerhouses that you claim are reliant on it.
Sure. If let's say the US didn't have nukes, they wouldn't be a powerhouse anymore. They
That doesn't
wouldn't. They
constitute
want to.
powerhouse. You admitted that doesn't constitute powerhouse, because would you concede that Pakistan is a powerhouse?
No.
Would you India?
Excuse me.
India? Would you concede that India is a powerhouse?
Wait, does India have nukes? I'm not sure of that.
Mm-hmm. And Pakistan. And also,
Pakistan not, but I would say India. I would agree that India is a powerhouse.
what are
Just
you
also because it is the fourth mightiest country from a military standpoint.
What
That's
does that have
what
to do
I
with
would also
nukes?
call.
You don't need manpower to do a nuke. Like, you don't need military might to set off a nuke. France has more nukes than the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So are they stronger than us?
Yeah.
No, they're not. Not at all. They have just as many nukes as they've got so many nukes. We've got so many nukes. And if we went to war again, we'd say, okay, you don't nuke us, we won't nuke you, but we'll have a big fight and we'll see who wins. That's exactly what's happening all over the world. When you talk about Kashmir, do you know the conflicts in Kashmir?
Yeah.
Why haven't they nuked each other?
Because the nuke is the last option that you use in a conflict. Because it is such destructive.
Was it the only two times that it's happened in history against people? Was that the last resort?
Do you mean the Japan
No,
incident?
I mean the other two. Yeah, yeah, Japan. Was
Because
that last resort?
no, that was. I'll admit that one was not a last resort.
Okay, so the
But
only
what
two
it,
times it's been used
yeah,
hasn't been last resort, but you keep saying last resort. People would only use it last resort. These power-hungry powerhouses that you keep referring to are trigger-happy morons at the site of war. The Cuban Missile Crisis almost destroyed half the world. The amount of bombs that were there, if they'd all gone off, it would have destroyed most of the northern hemisphere of the Earth. And you were minutes away from that happening. That's not balance. That's not good for humanity.
you said that they're trigger happy in war. No, they're not.
They're not trigger happy. Americans aren't trigger
Because
happy. Their
I could say they
retaliation
were.
for a couple of a harbour being bombed was to nuke two cities. That isn't trigger happy.
Okay, no, I think put yourself in that position that your country's being bombed.
That wasn't there.
You
That
wouldn't
wasn't
let
even
that
their country.
slide. Pearl Harbor was their territory. Your territory is what belongs to that state.
And it was unproportional. Considered unproportional the
And
world over.
also, and also, first of all, they did push back Japan, and because they wanted to prevent, because the plan was maybe the isle jumping plan of getting the important islands and then doing a mass invasion of the Japanese mainland. But the Americans knew the Japanese people wouldn't go down without a fight. Even the civilians, they would die to the last man. That's just how they've been educated.
In
And
other
to
words, a last resort. Yeah.
I
If the
would also
Japanese,
call it a
if the Japanese had
prevention.
those nukes, if the Japanese had those nukes, and they fought back to the last man, like you just said, then that would be a right for them to shoot a nuke at the US, right?
They would have probably used it before. Like I said, it is planned, or maybe I should have been more precise. I wanted to say it is planned to be a last resort. I wouldn't say it would really in the real deal. It probably wouldn't be, but also don't forget that having a nuke is also you can threat someone with that.
No, you can only threat people that don't have nukes.
Hmm.
You can't threaten anyone else, and that's where it becomes an imbalance.
No, but no, you can also threat someone else because let's say America and Russia would go back to a very big animosity. They both know, and that's what Mad says. Both parties know that if they engage in a nuclear war, both countries will experience a total destruction, nothing left.
I
And
don't know if you're
that's
not hearing me at all, but I'm saying that nukes only deter other nukes. They'd still go to war together. No, neither side would just immediately nuke each other. It's the
Mhm.
same with in 2016, Donald Trump, and 2017, and countless other times, Donald Trump said that if Kim Jong Un doesn't stop creating and testing nuclear warheads, he will level Korea, or North Korea. He'll just level it. Like, he continually threatened them when they had
Mhm.
and placed nukes in range of mainland America. So it's not a
Yeah, that's
deterrent. He
threatening
doesn't give a
deterrent.
shit. He doesn't give a shit. He was threatening the whole time, saying, if you fire a nuke, we'll fire a nuke. He didn't care.
That's what it says. When one side fires a nuke, the other one will also.
Okay,
That's why no one
okay,
fired, because they knew if one destroys one, the other one will also be destroyed. That's why they don't
and
do
that
it.
is good
That's
for
why they
humanity,
only
right?
say it. I'd
And that's
say
good
it's
for
good for
humanity.
humanity. I'd say it's
It's
good for
good to have
humanity.
war. Isn't good for humanity. On the well, most wars aren't good for humanity because they're mostly political bollocks now. But
I agree on that.
the nuclear arsenal is completely redundant as what it's actually meant to do. You're saying that it's a nuclear deterrent. It's a nuclear deterrent. It's only deterrent itself. It doesn't deter anything else. You're saying that it's a last resort. It's provably not a last resort. The only two times it has happened wasn't a last resort. I can give you countless times where it hasn't worked as a deterrent to normal war, and that is what would happen first. None of these places would just instantly nuke each other. That's why it didn't happen in the Cold War. That's why the Cuban Missile Crisis was very close to becoming that, because idiots agreed that they should just bomb them and get over with. But there was an equal amount of people in that control room that agreed that it was fucking retarded, if anything, to do that. And now you're seeing the denuclearization of the entire world steadily and very slowly, begrudgingly on my side. But that would be the best thing for humanity in this situation, in this scenario of war, when you talk about nuclear arms and how they deter things. It's provable that they don't deter war, and you can't prove that they deter each other, right? Because it hasn't happened really.
That's what Matt says. Like that's you're proving your point. And also what I'd like to also say is it's also in the example of Japan, the nuclear bomb was fired to prevent more loss than the Japanese and the Americans would have got if the if America would have invaded with their true power the mainland Japan.
Where are you getting that from? Can
That's the plan. That's the story of it. That's why they bombed Japan, to prevent more deaths than they calculated would have been caused if they would have invaded with true power the mainland of Japan.
Okay, so your idea of balance is a hierarchy, right? So America could say to say New Zealand. New Zealand's like one of the founders of denuclearization. Say to New Zealand, give me all your oil, or I'm going to nuke you. There isn't much oil in New Zealand, but they could just say that because it's a threat, right? And nuke is the ultimate threat, and they'd have no defense against that because they don't have nukes, right?
Uh, they wouldn't, but wait. I'm not 100% sure of that, but doesn't New Zealand belong to the English Crown?
I think it's in the Commonwealth.
Yeah. So due it being in the Commonwealth, that is a direct punch against the United Kingdom, which has a nuclear arsenal, which is a prevention of America ever going on New Zealand's territory, or
But
better
our
speaking,
nuclear
UK's
plan doesn't
territory.
cover our allies; it covers us. Our nuclear program, the Trident program, doesn't cover our allies specifically. There's no guarantee that we'll help them, and it's the same for America and its allies. There's no guarantee that they would meet them with nuclear force. They've agreed to help them with military force and military might, but not nuclear. And the same with our um, our program. And like I said to you, it's illegal to use them, right? And
Yeah,
even if someone has used them against you, it's still illegal. And Donald Trump saying that he would use them against him was illegal. That was a threat, and just the threat itself is illegal. Kim Jong Un saying that he would retaliate, that is illegal. It's like having a gun that you can't use.
fine. And okay, I'll have another point to make, which you can try to argument. You know the United Nations. You also know that there are a few countries who have some. They have some. There is a hierarchy there, which is the countries who are global power or on the winner side of World War II, mostly, are veto powers. And the veto countries in that round are the United States has a nuclear arsenal, Russia has a nuclear arsenal, France has a nuclear arsenal, and also your United Kingdom, which also has a nuclear arsenal.
Okay, so move on a little bit to
The
how.
balance is I will admit that balance of the world powers is a hierarchy, but it keeps the world powers in a balance of them not waging war directly against each other. That's what I said earlier, that because the Soviet Union and the United States both had a very big nuclear arsenal in the Cold War, they went to smaller countries who had internal issues, and one side supported one trader of it, North Korea, Vietnam being the best examples, and the other side supporting the South, or like, yeah, America supporting the South Vietnamese and Russia supporting the North. They knew that we can we can't attack them directly anymore. So what they did is we'll just wage war against each other, but just not directly. And
Okay,
that's where, yeah. Oh,
but
you.
so do you concede that the nuclear deterrent isn't a deterrent for actual war? It's just a deterrent for other nuclear war.
Mhm.
So it
just
doesn't
balance.
actually, it doesn't, so the only balance that it provides is the balance of nuclear war.
Yeah. But
So
that's what my proposition is about. Because nuclear war can only be waged by those who have nuclear arsenal, and those are the world powers. So, by that proposition, by that argument, I would have won this debate.
no, because your debate, your proposition was that it's good for humanity, and I'm yet to hear
Also
how
good.
it's good for humanity that the powers that be are of a hierarchy when the majority of the world doesn't have a nuclear arsenal. And then we talk a little bit about
Because they're
how
not using it. That's what's good for humanity. They do have the nuclear powers, and that they're very destructive, but since nuclear weapons deter other nuclear weapons, they won't fire at each other these oh so powerful bombs, which is essential good for humanity because no one will die by them.
that isn't reassured. There's nowhere is that reassured that they won't, right? So say people think that Donald Trump's a retard and he's tyrannical, and same for Putin and Kim Jong Un. Nothing is stopping them from firing nukes. Nothing whatsoever. Even if that mutually assured destruction happens, they don't care. And then you talk about the Middle East. A lot of the Middle East has nuclear weapons. What if one of those state powers with nuclear weapons decides to team up with terrorists? What if the terrorists that don't care if they die, the terrorists that will be crowned a martyr by their own people if they die, right? So they don't care if you get nuked because they nuke you first. Then it's not deterrence. It's in some ways for those terrorists an invitation. It's like a welcome.
Has it happened, first of all? And second of all, at that point, the UN would have already stepped in and would have sanctioned that country to the extreme and also would have waged a troop war against them and would have tried to prevent that. And that has, I think that happened already. So,
I didn't
and
catch
I'd
the
say,
question.
which I'd also like to point out, I believe everything that doesn't kill a big amount of humans is considered to be good for humanity.
Okay, so put a hypothetical number in it. How many lives has the nuclear bomb saved?
Probably a very big number. Um, I'd say more than 50 million at least.
Where are you pulling those numbers from?
That's what you just asked. You said just pick a number. That's what I'm going with. That's what you just asked me.
Yeah.
I'm answering your question.
So was that just a random number with no thought behind it at all?
No, I thought behind it.
Okay, so what thought
And
process came from 50 million people being saved by the atomic bomb?
uh, I will have to compare the Hiroshima bombs with the bombs we have now. The bombs we have now are excuse me for my word, a shit ton more powerful and more destructive than what we had at Hiroshima.
It doesn't matter. You're not talking about destructive capability. You're talking about the things that they saved, the people that they saved. So it doesn't matter how much damage they
Yes,
can cause. How much did they save? How are you equating the number 50 million?
because I would presume that's about the number that a modern day nuclear bomb could kill if it was fired and landed.
Just one.
Yeah,
Where?
and I'm also talking about the after effects.
Where?
I'm also how you mean where?
What you said, it would kill 50 million people if one bomb was dropped. Where?
I can be anywhere. Okay, maybe not anywhere. I take that back. would have to be some area where humans live, where humans popularize.
Okay. And have you got any proof of this? Have you got any proof that the nuclear deterrent has saved lives?
Not directly, but it's just common sense.
Okay, well, I have proof
I
that,
would.
that the atomic bomb has killed 350,000 people and another 74,000 in the other city.
Mm-hmm.
So, by equation, we can say that the atomic bomb has killed more people than it's saved, provably. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree on that. I can agree on that.
Well, then, so far, it has done more bad for humanity than good.
I still don't see it.
What don't you see? Do you not see that your whole argument is a hypothetical?
No,
Or do you see that my whole argument is that it's provable that
I
nukes
don't
are
have
so
enough proof of your
counterintuitive?
side. I don't see enough proof on your side.
Proof of what? What did you want? What specifically do you want proof on?
Uh, that the atomic bomb is bad for humanity.
Sure.
I
One sec.
don't.
Where would you like the sites posted to?
No, I don't mean sites. I mean in the argument till now. I personally am of the position that I haven't received enough proof for me to reevaluate my statement and think that atomic bombs are bad for humanity and don't hold balance, which my proposition sticks together. So you maybe win on the good humanity, but I won on the balance thing. So we could say it's a tie of
No,
some
no.
sort.
Listen. Don't get bogged down too much with the caring about winning. All right? This isn't a
No, I'm
blood sport.
not.
Don't worry about that. Concentrate more on your own points and the fact that you seem to be just. I don't know where you've got this information from, to be honest. Do you have any sources that agree with this? Do you have any studies that
Uh,
say that the nuclear deterrence is an actual ethical and functioning proposition?
well, I have to apologize for that because you accepted my debate yesterday, and I had to work like a normal person, I would say. I didn't have time to do any real big prep for this debate, so this is just based off knowledge that I have researched in the past because I I am very highly into history and highly into war history, including First World War, Second World War, Third Cold War, and I'm very into this weapon based. I'm heavy into weapon based. So being that the atomic bomb is a weapon of mass destruction, it it goes into this category which I am interested in.
Yeah, you do obviously like history. I think you're ignoring the equation of good and bad in society and the world over completely. With regards to, yes, in the Cold War, the nuclear deterrent maybe showed some semblance of working in the fact that they didn't want to have a nuclear fallout. They didn't want to have that, so that could be construed as a success for nuclear deterrence. But the hundreds, possibly even thousands of small scale wars that have happened between countries that have nuclear capabilities is proof that it doesn't work of anything else other than itself. So in itself, nuclear power and the atomic bomb itself is just completely irrelevant other than to itself. So the good thing to do for humanity would be denuclearization, and that would outweigh the quote unquote good of the nuclear bomb.
I have a last question to ask you. Would you would you go to the risk of killing about, let's say, 300,000 people, definite, and going into the risk of saving a few millions for that, maybe even a few hundred millions. Would
Yes.
you?
Do you want to know why?
Yeah.
Because most of the wars that are fought nowadays are targeted very well, a lot better than they were back then, with bombs being like precision drone strikes and things like that. They target people of interest. They don't target civilians normally. I understand there's a lot of controversy about it, and a lot of
Yeah.
civilians have died, but dropping nukes randomly across the world where the vast population of these cities that you're dropping bombs on or could drop bombs on are civilians. Now, I don't give a shit if the whole of North Korea wants to go to the war with America and kills all the soldiers. They signed up for it, maybe not in North Korea, but can't do much about that. But they signed up for it. If the soldiers want to go out and lay down their lives, let them do it. But the problem lies when they start nuking innocent people, the ones that have no towel in the war.
Yeah.
So yes, I would rather go to a conventional war than use an atomic bomb on innocent people. And so would the rest of the world. That's why it hasn't happened since. That's why everyone regards America's decision to bomb those cities stupid. It stopped the war, congratulations, but it also killed hundreds of thousands of people and poisoned the land for hundreds of years.
Mhm.
Only a fraction of those people
But
that died were soldiers. Those people were innocent families.
yeah, but do you understand the reason why they dropped? Do you understand why they dropped?
Yeah, because they're trigger happy and they got bigger balls than
I
they thought
disagree
they
on
did.
that. I
Disagree on
disagree
what?
on that. Uh, the reasoning behind the dropping of it was preventing more deaths through a conventional invasion, and also to get in front of other powers which would emerge victorious of the war like Russia, who has pimped itself through the Second World War from being a very farmer country to being the main contrahand or the main opponent to America until China finally got hold of their situation.
You just again and again proving my point more and more about imbalance because you like you said and you agree there's only balance at the top, at the tippy top of the food chain, at the United Nations roundtable, right? Those people are in some semblance of balance, right? They
Mhm.
agree with the mutual destruction, but they also
Yes,
agree
and
that denuclearization is better. Now, you've got people like Kim Jong Un that don't think that, and he's renowned for being silly about that thought. He
okay,
just wants to be big like everyone else, and that's fair enough. But at the point, think of it like
but
this:
does that
don't
fit my proposition? No, it doesn't, because North Korea is not a world power.
they're not a world power. They're one of the biggest militaries and some of the biggest arsenal of nuclear warheads in the world. If they wanted to, or if he wanted to, should I say, because it's a bit of a dictator regime, he could just take the whole of Asia.
No, he couldn't, because first of all, there's big boy China, and also Russia, both lying on the continent of Asia, which is the direct argument. He doesn't have the balls to do it. He can threat as much as he wants. That's just bluffing, and that's just being having big balls. That's
Uh,
what it's about in politics, having big balls.
so
And
China would,
my proposition is that world powers are in balance. And you may well have won on the good on being good on humanity. I will concede to that, but I won't concede to to that there's not a balance. There's a hierarchy with the world powers, and they're in balance.
but
Duh.
only for nuclear warfare. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what also my proposition due to the atomic bomb.
Yeah, but it's due to the atomic bomb for the atomic bomb. It completely just makes itself irrelevant. It's like none of them are going to use it. It's literally illegal for them to use it. So if there was a war and they decided to use it afterwards, there would be hundreds of years of fucking payments and court cases after it. It would be a shit show.
Do you
Nobody wants
really
to use
think
them.
if the USA would just drop a atomic bomb, do you really think that some United Nations would just say, okay, you just nuclear bombed that country, you're gonna pay reparations? Do you think that really is gonna happen? Think logically. That's not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen
Why wouldn't that happen exactly? Especially when America signed this declaration.
because they're the biggest military might in the world.
So what? That's not an act of
I will
war to
take the
say that.
I will take the counter example. Germany lost World War II. They got fucked in the but they committed war crimes. They've done horrible things. I won't deny that. But the Americans and the British did also horrible things. So why didn't they have to pay reparations? Because they were the heroes who stopped the bad Germans, which the Germans are bad. But yeah.
What?
I never heard an apology from the USA but dropping the A bomb on Japan.
Because
Just on the
I
side.
don't know how to nail this into your head a little bit more. The World War II, wasn't illegal. They didn't have contracts to say they wouldn't do these things. I'm saying that America signed contracts and signed agreements to not use nuclear force against anyone, right? So that is why it's illegal. Germany and England and America didn't have to pay reparations because they didn't say that it was illegal. Now, you
Yeah,
want to say,
Germany had to pay reparations because they lost the war and they caused the war. But
but like you said, we did evil
just
things as
based,
well.
yes, you bombed. Just okay. The Germans did bomb London. That was horrible. But did that justify that you bombed a completely industrial free city?
No,
No.
not
Doesn't justify bombing just because they bombed you. That's not a justification to bomb them.
no. And I'd go as far to say
And
that your proposition about if you could take out the word atomic and just get rid of bombs, I'd agree that bombs themselves are cruel and just very, especially in World War II, were very untargeted, and you couldn't specifically only target soldiers. There, it's a cruel way to fight a war when you can't eliminate the possibility of civilian casualties.
so you agree that war in general is very gruesome. So I have a question to ask. Would you rather fight a conventional war? And I will now make a example with that. Would you rather fight a conventional war costing a whopping 100 million lives, then using one A bomb to kill about, let's say, I'm talking about Cold War time, just before the hydrogen bomb, would to like about a mere million people. A million people is also a lot, but in comparison to 100, would you rather fight a conventional war, which is definitely 100 million people, or would you rather drop a A bomb, killing about 100 people, but ending the war?
Depends entirely on what you mean by people. Do you mean civilians and soldiers, or just
Both,
civilians?
both.
Then, then I'd rather do the conventional war because it's so far along now that we don't even need troops. The America doesn't need troops in the Middle East. They could literally just control the area with drone strikes
Mm-hmm.
and targeted drone strikes. Right, the civilian. There is no war now that would cost 100 million lives that aren't targeted, right? I don't. There's UN sanctions against killing civilians.
Mhm.
So, no, it's an impossibility. The hypothetical wouldn't happen.
No, but it's just a hypothetical. And by the way, if the UN would sanction killing of civilians, then the US would be constantly sanctioned because they have killed through those drone strikes a shit ton of civilians.
They are constantly sanctioned, and so is the UK as well.
Um, I didn't really see that, but still, I would say if you're still killing civilians and continuing to do that, the UN might should step up and tell them to stop the bullshit.
Okay, so who gave one final point? Who gave the United Nations or the nuclear family the hierarchy that you say that they have?
You mean the all the veto powers, which
Hmm.
can pretty much decide on those were the the members of that seat are the people who won World War II and later on China, because China got into this position because they grew massively, incredibly, and also becoming the everything's made in China now. So and it's pretty cheap to manufacture in China. So everybody wants to have a good relation show, oh, here you can have a seat in the veto and you get a veto power. How about that? And we have all good with you.
Would you agree that the veto powers and the UN in a whole would be a much stronger deterrent for war than the arms race, than the nuclear bomb?
Not how it is constructed now. If it would have been constructed how it was meant to be with the original UN Charter, which makes automatically any threats, any acts of violence automatically illegal by the I think it was the sixth paragraph of the first thing subtitle. Um, if the UN would have been built correctly and would have been held correctly, and the right veto powers would, or no, you should probably abandon the veto powers in general. If it would be, then I would say that the UN is a bigger deterrent than the atomic bomb. But as it is now, right now in this current time, I believe that the atomic bomb is a bigger deterrent than the UN. Just because that the like we said, the US is killing civilians and they're not stopping. Not afraid of the UN and their sanctions. Neither are the UK.
No, exactly. So the use of the nuclear bomb would set off a chain reaction, in all likelihood. In, if America bombed a country that didn't have nuclear bombs, but it was allied with someone nuclear bombs and they'd fire it again, then it's very likely that the next time someone uses a cruel bomb, someone uses an atomic bomb on a country, it could be an extinction level event
Mm-hmm.
completely. And that to me isn't balance. And by no
But see,
stretch of the
now you're
imagination is
proving
it
me
balance.
right. With that
It's not.
statement, you just proved me right
No,
because that's why they won't do it. That's why they didn't do it until now. That's why they
they
will never
don't give
do
a
it.
shit. They don't give a shit. They didn't give a shit when they nuked Japan. They don't. They won't give a shit if Kim Jong Un keeps making nukes and then threatens them. They don't care about the mutually assured destruction. It will turn into just petty revenge. They don't care that if you fire a nuke, we're going to fire a nuke back. They don't. They obviously don't care. Japan has allies now with nuclear power. So if America did it again, they could be nuked, but it wouldn't be from them. They could just wipe out Japan. That isn't balance. That's one person having more power than the other. That's not balance. That's just a hierarchy of a trigger-happy nation with nuclear arms.
But that's why they are allies. Because that
Okay, so take Norway, take New Zealand, right? Has um, no nuclear arms and no solid allies that would defend them against a nuclear attack. What if the UK just obliterated the country altogether, just nuked it from existence? What
a
would happen?
nuclear umbrella around Japan. And that's why
No, I'm talking about New Zealand. If the UK decided to nuke New Zealand off the face of the earth, what would happen to England? Then there isn't balance there. That's not mutually assured destruction either. That's just one side obliterating the other. That's not balance at all. The balance that you're talking about is sketchy at best. And it was provably sketchy. In 1995, a Norwegian research rocket was misidentified as an incoming nuke from the US in Russia. They scrambled different jets and 2 submarines to fire nukes at America. The crisis was averted by mere minutes. A lot closer call than the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, you're not taking into account human error, malfunction, or misunderstandings. This isn't balance. This is like a rat trap. And the big powerhouses that you describe are the fat rats that want that bit of cheese. Anything? Hello? You dead? Did someone threaten you with a nuke?
Sorry, I was AFK for a second. Did he disconnect or something?
No idea. Seems to be.
I'll just ping him real quick.
hello.
Yeah, you're
Yeah, you're
audible.
back.
Can you hear me again?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I said, I'll repeat. Hear me? Let's say there's another big fat rat crossing me, and we both see that piece of cheese. We won't go at each other for that piece of cheese, because if we go at it, we will both get severely injured through our fight. Maybe we win, but that's not the price we want to pay for that piece of cheese.
Where's the proof of that?
I'd say that's just proof is logical thinking.
Well, there is no logical thinking in war, especially in recent wars.
Oh yes, there is. Oh, logical thinking is always in war.
Yeah, mostly
Logical
about
thinking,
profits, and there's huge profits in nuclear war.
tactics especially. That's logical thinking. How can I defeat my enemy? That's logical thinking. How can I best get my enemy to surrender or defeat him? That's logical thinking. So I just proven that to you. Uh, since it is getting late, I'm probably gonna go now to the closing statements
Yeah, sure.
because
Do you want to do one
I got to
first,
get.
or
No, you know what? I'll let you go first because I started the debate. Just by the way, I have to get up at 5 a.m. That's why I'm slowly going to the finishing state.
yeah, no problem. So closing statement would be that it's commonly the common consensus among the world leaders now that denuclearization is a good thing, and most nations are striving for it, and especially the UK and um, its allies are denuclearizing itself efficiently. As it pertains to balance, it's clearly not balance for there to be a hierarchy of nuclear power in the world, and there to be nations that don't have any nuclear power. When we talk about balance between the powerhouses, like Russia, China, and the US, mutually assured destruction isn't a reliable enough contingency plan um, to stop the nuclear fallout, to stop nuclear war.
Okay. So no, I'll do my proposition is that the world powers are in balance through the atomic bomb, which includes mutual assured destruction. That is a preventer because it is in no interest of any country to be destroyed. So Russia wouldn't go to a nuclear war with the US. They might be threatening each other, but they will not go at each other with nuclear bombs, which is balance.
Was that your closing statement?
I'm thinking of the good humanity. Atomic
You've already
bombs.
conceded that it's not good for humanity.
Not directly, but if you go on a hypothetical way, it is somewhat. You could say it is good for humanity. But fact based, I'm probably weaker there than you. With you have shown some, you've shown some good proof, but I'm still not completely convinced that it's bad for humanity. Just because I'm someone who always thinks a little bit hypothetical, because if you don't think somewhat of hypothetical, then your knowledge is somewhat lacking, you could say. And that's where I'm ending. That's where I'm ending my finishing statement.
Yeah, I think wars would be totally different if we thought more hypothetically. But yeah, we'll pick it up another day if you want to.
Sure.
So I just wanted to be clear, are you conceding the debate proposition, therapist?